The Senate Foreign Relations Committee hearing room carried the weight of institutional power in every detail. Mahogany panels lined the walls, the Senate seal dominated the space behind the chairman's elevated bench, and the gallery was packed with diplomatic corps representatives, foreign policy analysts, and journalists who had covered these hearings for decades. Secretary of State Marco Rubio sat at the witness table with the easy confidence of someone who had spent 20 years navigating these exact rooms, first as a senator and now as the nation's top diplomat. His prepared testimony had consumed 40 minutes, delivered with the smooth cadence of a career politician who understood how to fill time without saying anything that could be used against him later. Representative Jasmine Crockett sat 3 rows back in the observer section reserved for House members attending Senate proceedings. She was not a member of this committee and had no official questioning time, but Senate protocols allowed House members to observe and submit written questions through the chairman if time permitted. She had arrived early, taken a seat near the aisle, and spent Rubio's entire testimony taking notes in a leather portfolio that rested on her lap. She wore a black suit, minimal jewelry, her expression giving nothing away as Rubio explained his vision for American diplomacy rooted in strength, clarity, and unwavering commitment to democratic values worldwide. When Rubio finished his opening statement, Chairman Menendez began the first round of questions from committee members. The exchanges followed predictable patterns: softball questions from Republicans praising Rubio's leadership, harder questions from Democrats about specific policy contradictions that Rubio deflected with practiced ease. He was in his element, voice strong, answers rehearsed but delivered naturally, the picture of a man who had prepared for exactly these questions and had responses that would satisfy his base while avoiding commitments that could constrain him later. 90 minutes into the hearing, Chairman Menendez noted that Representative Crockett had submitted a request to pose a question to the secretary and asked if Rubio would be willing to entertain a brief question from the House observer. Rubio smiled and gestured magnanimously. Of course. He was always happy to answer questions from any member of Congress, regardless of chamber or party. Democracy thrived on robust dialogue. Crockett stood and approached the microphone that had been set up in the observer section. She thanked Chairman Menendez and thanked Secretary Rubio for his willingness to answer. She did not smile. She simply stood with perfect posture, hands resting lightly on the microphone stand, and began to speak in a voice that carried clearly through the chamber without any sense of urgency or aggression. She noted that during his confirmation hearings, Rubio had been asked repeatedly about his commitment to defending democracy and human rights as core pillars of American foreign policy. He had given powerful testimony about standing with people fighting for freedom against authoritarian regimes. She had found his testimony compelling, she said, and she wanted to ask about how those principles were being applied in practice. Rubio nodded, his expression suggesting he was prepared for whatever policy question was coming. Human rights and democracy were indeed central to his work as Secretary of State. He looked forward to discussing specific applications. Crockett opened her portfolio and removed a single sheet of paper. She held it at her side, not yet raising it for cameras or reference, just holding it with the casual grip of someone who already knew what it said. Her question was very simple, she explained. Just one question, and it would only take a moment to answer. On March 15th of this year, Secretary Rubio, you met with Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman of Saudi Arabia in Riyadh. The meeting was not on your public schedule. It was not announced in advance. The State Department did not issue a readout until 4 days later, and that readout was 11 sentences long. During that meeting, did you discuss the case of Jamal Khashoggi? The room changed temperature. Not literally, but the shift in attention was almost physical. Journalists in the gallery stopped typing and looked up. Diplomats in the foreign observer section leaned forward slightly. Chairman Menendez's expression remained neutral, but his chief of staff whispered something urgent into his ear. Rubio's smile held, but something behind his eyes had recalibrated. He said that he discussed many topics with Crown Prince Mohammed, including regional security, counterterrorism cooperation, and economic partnership. The meeting had been productive and had advanced American interests in a strategically vital region. Crockett did not move. She did not raise the paper she was holding. She simply asked the question again, her voice unchanged. During that meeting, did you discuss the case of Jamal Khashoggi? Rubio shifted in his seat slightly, the first physical tell. He said that diplomatic conversations often covered sensitive topics and that he could not disclose every element of private discussions with foreign leaders without compromising the trust necessary for effective diplomacy. Crockett nodded as though this were a reasonable answer. She appreciated the importance of diplomatic discretion. So let me ask a related question. During your confirmation hearing, you were asked directly by Senator Kaney whether you would raise the Khashoggi case in all future interactions with Saudi leadership. Do you remember your answer? Rubio said he remembered the general discussion, but would need to review the transcript for his exact words. Crockett raised the paper she had been holding. This is the transcript from your confirmation hearing, page 147. She read aloud, her voice clear and measured. Senator Kaney asked, will you commit to raising the murder of Jamal Khashoggi in every meeting with Saudi officials until there is full accountability? Your answer was, and I quote, absolutely. This is not negotiable. American values are not for sale, and I will make that clear in every engagement. She lowered the paper and looked at Rubio. So I am asking you directly, under oath, as you were under oath during your confirmation, when you met with Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman on March 15th, did you raise the case of Jamal Khashoggi as you committed to doing? The silence that followed had a quality unlike the normal pauses in congressional testimony. This was not a witness gathering thoughts or choosing diplomatic language. This was the silence of someone who had just realized that every possible answer was a trap. If he said yes, he would be asked for details about what accountability he demanded and what response he received, details that would expose either his lack of follow-through or Saudi Arabia's dismissal of American pressure. If he said no, he would be confessing to violating a sworn commitment made during his confirmation hearing. Rubio opened his mouth. No sound came out. He closed it again. His hand moved toward the water glass in front of him, then stopped halfway, the gesture aborted. His eyes moved from Crockett to Chairman Menendez to the gallery and back to Crockett. 3 seconds. 6, 9, 12. The only sound in the chamber was the soft clicking of camera shutters in the press gallery, photographers capturing the moment when the nation's top diplomat sat wordless before a question that had no good answer. Finally, Rubio spoke. His voice was quieter than before, missing the earlier confidence. He said that the Khashoggi case was raised in the context of broader human rights discussions with Saudi officials, though he could not speak to every specific meeting or interaction. Crockett did not argue with the answer. She simply removed a second document from her portfolio. This is a State Department cable dated March 18th, 3 days after your meeting with the Crown Prince. The cable was sent from the U.S. Embassy in Riyadh to State Department headquarters summarizing the outcomes of your visit. It lists 12 topics that were discussed during your meeting. Jamal Khashoggi is not mentioned. Human rights is not mentioned. The words accountability and justice do not appear anywhere in the cable. She looked up from the document. This cable was provided to the House Foreign Affairs Committee under subpoena last week. I have it because I serve on that committee. So I am going to ask you one more time. When you met face-to-face with the man who the U.S. intelligence community concluded ordered the murder and dismemberment of a Washington Post journalist, did you raise that murder and demand accountability as you swore you would do? Rubio's face had changed color, the same deepening flush that happens when blood pressure spikes under stress. His jaw clenched and unclenched. He said that classified diplomatic cables did not capture every nuance of private conversations and that she was drawing conclusions from incomplete information. Crockett set the cable on the microphone stand where cameras could see it. She said she was not drawing conclusions. She was asking a direct question that required a yes or no answer. Did you raise the Khashoggi case with Crown Prince Mohammed on March 15th? Rubio's attorney, seated behind him, leaned forward and whispered something. Rubio waved him off with visible irritation, the gesture sharp enough that it registered as barely controlled frustration. He said that he resented the implication that he had not honored his commitments, that he had spent his entire career fighting for human rights, and that he would not be lectured by a House member who had been in Congress for less than 3 years about how to conduct American foreign policy. Crockett's expression did not change. She did not take the bait. She simply waited until he finished, then spoke again in the same measured tone. I am not lecturing you, Mr. Secretary. I am asking you to answer a question you already answered during your confirmation. You told the Senate you would raise this case in every meeting. Now I am asking if you did what you said you would do. If you did, just say yes. If you did not, say no. This is not complicated. The chamber had gone completely still. Every eye was on Rubio. His hands gripped the edge of the witness table, knuckles visible. His breathing was audible in the microphone, shallow and controlled in the way of someone working very hard to maintain composure. He said that diplomatic engagement was complex and that raising every issue in every meeting was not always strategically optimal. Sometimes relationship building required patience and timing. Sometimes you had to prioritize the issues that would move the needle on American security and economic interests. Crockett let him finish. Then she asked her final question, and her voice dropped even quieter, forcing the room to strain to hear her. So American values are for sale after all? You said they were not negotiable. You said Khashoggi was not negotiable. But now you are saying that you made a strategic decision not to raise it because other priorities were more important. Which statement was the truth? The one you made under oath to get confirmed, or the one you are making now under oath to avoid accountability? Rubio's attorney stood up and objected that the question was argumentative and designed to entrap the witness. Chairman Menendez sustained the objection and asked Crockett to rephrase. Crockett did not rephrase. She simply thanked Chairman Menendez, thanked Secretary Rubio for his time, and returned to her seat. She did not look at Rubio as she walked away. She simply gathered her portfolio, sat down, and resumed taking notes on the testimony that followed. But the hearing had fundamentally changed. The remaining senators asked their prepared questions, but the energy had drained from the room. Rubio's answers became shorter, more defensive, less polished. He checked his watch twice in the next 20 minutes, a tell that he wanted the session to end. When Chairman Menendez finally gavelled the hearing to a close, Rubio stood quickly and left through the side exit without stopping to speak with any of the senators or journalists who approached him. The clip spread across social media within an hour. Not the full exchange, but the 12 seconds of silence. Just Rubio's face, frozen in the realization that he had been caught in a contradiction he could not explain away, while Crockett's voice posed the simplest question in American democracy. Did you do what you said you would do? The State Department issued a statement that evening claiming that Secretary Rubio regularly raised human rights concerns with all foreign leaders, and that any suggestion otherwise was a politically motivated distortion. But the statement did not answer the actual question. It did not say whether Rubio had raised Khashoggi with Mohammed bin Salman on March 15th. It could not say that because saying yes would invite questions about what accountability he demanded, and saying no would confirm that he had broken his confirmation oath. So the statement said nothing, which in Washington meant everything. 3 days later, the Washington Post published Crockett's full question and Rubio's non-answer on the front page under the headline, Secretary of State Silent on Saudi Commitment. The story included expert analysis from former diplomats who noted that the 12-second silence was extraordinary in the context of congressional testimony, suggesting either that Rubio had not raised the case and knew he would be caught lying, or that he had raised it so ineffectively that he was embarrassed to admit what response he received. Either way, the silence had communicated what no answer could have hidden. The commitment Rubio made to get confirmed was not the commitment he kept once confirmed. The values he called non-negotiable had been negotiated away in a private meeting that was kept off the public schedule precisely because he knew the American people would object to what he was doing in their name. Jasmine Crockett had asked one simple question. She had not accused. She had not editorialized. She had not needed to. She had simply asked whether the Secretary of State had done what he swore under oath he would do, and when he could not answer, the silence told the entire story. 12 seconds. That was all it took for the collapse to be complete. 12 seconds of a powerful man realizing that all his years of political experience, all his rehearsed deflections, all his diplomatic language could not answer the simplest question in the world. Did you keep your word? And when the answer was no, no amount of silence could make it sound like yes.